Well, our foreign minister brings up the talk once again of India's position at the UN Security Council. Some say it's ritualistic, but there is a feeling the Modi government might really want to push it this time. But can it happen? Will it be successful at all? Let's put it across the table. What do you think? Ambassador Weisner, talk about Security Council, sort of a comprehensive reform has been on for more than 2 decades.
Well, you're sitting in the presence of one of the great experts, the great historians of the United Nations, so I feel very shy in answering your question. I believe very deeply that India should be on the Security Council. I was delighted when President Obama moved American policy into supporting India's entry into the Security Council. But I think an honest appreciation on your part and ours would have to recognize that simply this position is not enough to bring along a fundamental shift in the thinking of the international community about the Security Council. Who's going to be the other members? What authorities will be changed? What will happen in Europe? There are so many interlocking questions that over the decades I have followed this question, it's never been possible to sort them out. Therefore, I believe Security Council expansion to include India, or as Field Marshal President Sisi asked for Egypt the other day, is not going to happen anytime soon. There are just too many strings to be untied. But having said that, I do not believe that India need hold back. As the nations of the world created a concert of Europe in the years after Napoleon fell from power, they didn't have a Security Council, and yet they kept the peace in Europe for 70, 80 years. Why, therefore, can India not be part of a coalition of great nations, great powers that have global effect? You don't need the Security Council to do that. You need a wise and energetic foreign policy.
Mother?
Ambassador, I've been a long-standing cynic about the UN and the Security Council, and my reasons are as follows. The UN is now, the P5 are essentially made up of countries who are more has-been powers than those who are future powers. I mean, take a look at Britain and France. Whatever the economic indicators and military indicators, they really don't really matter without American muscle in world politics. That's one. The second point is that the Security Council in particular has just been an exaggerated version of the world's most overpriced debating society. And so therefore, is it time for us all, if there is a reluctance, and I think the reluctance is not...
Where is the reluctance from?
I think the reluctance is from the other powers that they feel that the countries like India which get in will then marginalize them. I mean, you can't have a quota system for the Security Council when you have 3 countries from Europe in the Security Council already, and then you say then we'll have 2 from Asia and 2 from Africa. That's ridiculous.
Richard, let me ask you, what really is the problem? What is the basic James, sorry, what is the basic obstacle, and is there a mindset among the 5 permanent members?
It's not, no, I'll tell you what the obstacle is. I was writing a book about the United Nations during the last time there was a big push for this in 2005. So I was basically sitting there listening to these debates. Every country that wants to be in the council and that deserves to be in the council has another country whose goal is to prevent it from being in the council. And so it becomes a self-canceling system. It is not only that the 5 don't want to have their power diluted, though that's true. Several of the 5 would be quite happy to permit a number of other members, especially including India. Look, to me, the question is not, why is this so? Because alas, it is so. I think the question is, given that India in this regard is a victim of a serious injustice,
why do you say injustice?
Because India should be in the council. There's no question. Of course it should be. But how is India, let me just finish my thought, how is India going to handle that fact? Is that going to be a source of a kind of epic hissy fit and a sense of kind of surly repudiation of the world, or is India going to say, yes, but we have terribly important business to transact, we're one of the great countries of the world, we have to work on our own interests and those interests that are shared with other states?
No, I think, see, I take exception to your use of the word he see fit. I think what India is saying today is that in terms of its economic size, its military size, its population, and its place in the world as a leading democracy of the world, and a top-notch peacekeeper with a history of an established democracy and a strong participation in the United Nations, I think it is only an obvious question as to why it is kept out, not why it is not included. And there are other ways. G4 is there. India, Germany, Brazil, Japan have been lobbying
that was
together.
The package in 2005.
Could I come in here a minute?
No, I just wanted to understand, since you're an expert there, what is the main obstacle?
Listen, Richard is the expert now, so I've said my piece. He knows the UN today far, far better than I do. So
Walter wanted to come in. Walter.
Walter. Let me just make a cut. Somebody said the question. I think you did that. That India has been kept out. I think that's much too simplified an explanation of what's happening. I think to put it in the context. How did the five get to be the five at the UN? It was a consensus after World War II that was the power equation in 1945-46. That's how you got the five. Now we have this different power equation. The problem is, there's no consensus now as to what that power equation should be. And you've got, as someone else just mentioned, various countries suggested, but they have neighbors who don't want them in for one reason or the other. Argentina wouldn't be happy about Brazil. China wouldn't be happy about Japan, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got, the whole question of debating how the situation, who's going to be on it, and that's the problem.
I know what you're saying, and if I may...
You went dead on me.
No, I know what you're saying. You see, I understand around the table there is a sense, but that it's really difficult. It's not going to happen easily. It's extremely complicated. We just want to understand
something else. Something else on the Indian reaction. Someone, I don't think the Indian reaction has been a hissy fit. I think the Indian reaction, in fact, has been not all that focused on getting into the UN. I think because the Indians who sort of manage the foreign policy realize it's more important how India handles Japan and China, for example, in East Asia, than it is in getting into the UN. That's where the focus is going to be, because that's where their real future lies in terms of successes and achievements for India on the world stage.
Won't you say that there is a sense of exasperation in South Bloc, that we've been making these I remember, I think in recent memory, the first time this was articulated effectively was about 20 years ago, when Salman Khurshid was asked to articulate this Indian position at the UN as Minister of State. And since then, we've really seen documents come out, Kofi Annan ordering a number of studies, a new approach to how the UN should be restructured, etc. But that's what they are. They are studies that get shelved.
Yeah, but the fact is, as the Indian permanent representative at the UN said, we are incurable optimists on this whole issue. We're incurable.
There's no consensus.
We're incurable optimists, Dr. Anderson, on a lot of things, including Pakistan, by the way. We are genuinely optimistic that at some point of time in the future, Pakistan also will become a reasonable state.
Well, I'm not sure Indians are incurable optimists. I'm married to an Indian lady, so I'm not sure that's necessarily true. But I think what the issue, we don't have a consensus anymore, as we did in 45, 46, as to who those members should be, and it's going to be terribly difficult to work that out anymore.
They were all on the winning side.
Yes, I take it. But let me just get in, Richard, at the minute. Do you think this is going to happen?
Security Council reform is like test match cricket. It's incredibly complicated. Most of the world doesn't care. India loves. But the reality is you face three major opponents to reform. China does not want you in. Russia does not want any reform because it likes the Security Council as it is. Your biggest problem, though, is that you have lost the US. The Obama administration wanted India to be a permanent member of the Council. Obama said that.
That was in 2010 when Obama went to India.
Then you had
What changed?
Then you had Libya. India abstained. Then you had Syria. India abstained at first on what to do in Syria. Now you have a situation in Ukraine where India is seen as being closer to the Russian position than to the US position. So why should Washington help you get onto the Security Council if everything you're going to do is either abstain or side with American
I have to very quickly wrap up on this, but I must counter you on that. I presume that one of the key criteria to be on the Security Council is not to be a lackey of the United States.
Well, Japan would like to be on the Security Council, and I think China argues that Japan would be a lackey of the United States.
Well,
and actually, my country is on the Security Council, Great
Well,
Britain.
there are a lot of
and we have a
Indians.
certain lackey status.
A lot of Indians would say between a choice of being on the Security Council and having an independent foreign policy, we'd go for the latter. But gentlemen, I know we're short of time. I value your participation today. I've greatly enjoyed this conversation, and I think to all our viewers across India, big thank you to all of you for joining us. Dr. Walter Anderson in Washington, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And a reminder to all our viewers that our non-stop coverage continues from the UN General Assembly, where Nawaz Sharif will be making his speech, and then Narendra Modi 24 hours after that. Will we see the Kashmir issue raised once again? Will Modi respond or look the other way? Right through all these events and live coverage on Sunday evening from the Madison Square Gardens, where Modi has that big rendezvous with the Indian community. Stay tuned with us. Thank you for watching us this evening. Good night and goodbye.